Okay, so here we are. First expert series that I run in dark social strategies. It's a great pleasure to launch our expert series first episode with Vladimir. Vladimir, he's not only a great expert in B2B marketing and demand generation, but also someone that I have personally followed a lot. So I feel very honored to be here with him today. So Vlad, welcome to my podcast. Thank you very much for being here and being the first the first person that I can interview here at my podcast. So thank you very much for being here.
Oh, no, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Okay, great. So let me introduce a little bit Vladimir for those who still doesn't know him. Vladimir worked at Sony, EMC, and Sirris, building, marketing, and selling complex business-to-business products and services until launching his consulting company Scale XL in 2011. In 2017, he partnered with Andrei Zinkevich, sorry if I don't pronounce well the surname, to launch FullFunnel.io, where they train and coach marketing and sales teams of B2B tech and service-based companies with high ACV and long sales cycle. Today, he's a leader in the B2B marketing industry. Again, thank you for being here, and let's go straight with the questions that I have for you today. They're very soft, but I know that you will fill them with very, very valuable content. So, as an expert in B2B marketing, I see none of your services is specialized in pure lead generation. What is the reason behind that?
The reason is that really the way that the buyers are buying has changed. And especially if you look at the high ACV being the annual contract value. So let's say large deal size, more complex sales, which is where we are operating. This is what we do. And you have multiple buyers, this buying cycles or sales cycles. Lead generation is not a very effective way to actually get to the consideration set and eventually being chosen as a vendor.
Yeah, exactly. This is also something that I like to talk about in my podcast. Times are changing, especially after the pandemic, and the way we behave, both at the personal and business to business model, has changed. So it's a new
I
age.
mean, it's been changing for a while, and
Yeah.
I think there was maybe a short time while the pure outbound lead generation strategies that we see so many of them, right, are used to kind of work until people also started to see through that. And the problem is as well that basically you're working the numbers. So what does that mean? That means that out of everybody who is potentially buying right now, or out of the whole market, only a few percent of them are buying. So what you're trying to do is, I want to get to those that are buying. Now, the problem that you have is that you're positioning yourself as a commodity, right? You're just one of the many who are reaching out, and you're positioning yourself probably the worst kind of a vendor. B, you're coming too late in the game. If you're there, chosen, like even if you are chosen to be in the consideration set, like one of the vendors, usually the reason why they might choose you is because they just need to have, for the procurement or etc., they just need to have, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 providers. So they will choose you, and you're much more likely not to win that deal, especially if the deal is larger, because all the other vendors or some of the other vendors have been building their narrative and their positioning with their buyers, and you just came like, okay, one of the many there. So there are many reasons. And on top of all of that, like, I mean, even you're there at the right time, at the right place, but what happens is, in a lot of cases, even then, they will still ignore you because there are just so many people who are doing exactly the same, and have all learned to just ignore these kind of messages in the meantime.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the likelihood of getting to your target at the right time is very low, and on top of that, you have to add the low conversion that you might have because
Yes.
of not good differentiation. But I love what you said about becoming a commodity if you just do lead generation. And actually, one of the things that I like to say is that when you run demand generation and more elaborated strategies, you're building an asset for your company. When you just do lead generation, it's as soon as you stop paying, the ball will just stop. Yeah,
Especially during these times, like in any economic downturn, what happens? Well, there is less demand, right? So immediately your efforts are going to go down, like the results of your efforts are going to go down, and then everybody is going to be in a panicky mode. And I remember like when COVID hit, and people were started to lose, at the very beginning. For the digital industry, later it turned out to be actually a very good time. But a lot of people at the beginning, a lot of companies were reacting in a, they were panicked, like what is going to happen. People stop buying, like what is going on. And so what you had, and we did the research, and one of the people who we interviewed or we spoke to said something like, in the desperate, now how was it, like desperate COVID driven mass of outreach, like people out of desperation, like, and in other words, like there's going to be even more competition, even more people are going to try to reach to your buyers. So
yeah,
all of that combined means that actually the only companies that are going to win are the ones who are generating demand, because natural demand is going down.
absolutely, absolutely. So, having said that, are you specialized in any vertical in any industry across B2B companies, or could any B2B company work with you?
So you mentioned at the beginning B2B tech companies. What does that mean? That means usually B2B SaaS
Hmm.
companies who sell to the upper middle market or enterprise, with deal sizes between usually 20 to 30,000 would really be the minimum a year, until let's say 300. We have, obviously some of them will have even larger deals, but usually it is about, let's say, between 30 and 300,000 average deal size. So they're selling either to enterprise or to upper mid market. Sometimes we also work with companies who provide service, usually related to technology. So we have worked with some software companies providing specific services, etc. This is kind of our niche.
Yeah, that's a lot of sense. Yeah. So, one of the things that has brought my attention a lot is the fact that when I talk to marketers, when I go through LinkedIn and all of that, many marketers talk about market research. Not many, a few of them, because at some point, market research is something that people see as something that, yeah, it's too obvious to talk about it. They all say that they do market research. And going across your post, I've seen that you talk about the ICP and how important it is. And one of the things that for me is important to talk about this is because I see many marketers not doing market research before starting a strategy. And I believe, as well as I think you do as well, that market research is perhaps the most important key on a strategy. So, what do you think about these? How do you see market research plays a role in a strategy? What's your view on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, such a good question, because, like you say, a lot of people skip through that. A lot of marketers just want to get to the tactics and want to skip through strategy. And I remember like speaking to a lot of people, and they kind of assume that they do know their customers, but that is not really true. And so you speak about ideal customer profile. This is especially important if you're selling in, well, it's important in any marketing, right? But it's even more important if you're selling, let's say, larger deals, more complex, because you don't need a lot of clients, right? But you need the right type of clients. So another thing that happens with like more numbers game kind of marketing, whether that's outreach, whether that's just some ads that you're running on a kind of a mass market, is that usually these kind of tactics don't really generate the best kind of clients. They don't generate the best kind of deals. So you really want to zoom in onto like, who are my best customers? That's one point. And the other point is also we spoke about commoditization, we spoke about how do you stand out, and it's like something that people don't think about enough, I think, because they assume that they have some sort of differentiation on the level of the product. But we have, like, nobody's doing exactly what we do, and that's absolutely not true. If you just go to G2 or any of those SaaS directories and you just look at any category there, like, it's going to be super crowded. It's going to be super crowded with the solutions who have the exact same features that you have, and then maybe more. And so it's standing out is so important. But how can you stand out if you don't really deeply know your customers and really can zoom in on, like, who are my really best fit customers? That's probably the easiest way to stand out, is not being everything for everyone, but being something specific for a specific type of customer. And the third point there as well, important, is that we spoke about how buyer journey has changed, how the way that the people are buying has changed. And so it's really important to understand how your customers are buying, how they are, discovering and evaluating and choosing and purchasing a solution like yours. And what I mean by that, very concretely, I mean that what are the real triggers? Because the buyer journey doesn't really start with a click on your website or somebody, filling out your form. That's how your sales process might start. But their buying journey probably started way, way, way earlier. For example, I don't know, you're selling some sort of marketing service or a product, and maybe 3 months ago, 4 or 5, 6 months ago, a CEO had a really bad board meeting where they were read by the investors saying, okay, you missed the quarterly targets again. And that's how it started, because then they started looking, if it's a problem for the CEO, it's going to be a problem also for the CMO and the head of sales, right? And that could be one example of a start of a buying journey, which is like way before they are not even sure whether they're going to invest in technology, whether they're going to invest in doing more of what they did, maybe going to hire more salespeople, work with an agency, invest in technology. Like, there's all these options that they haven't even started to explore, which is where the buyer journey starts. And you want to understand this, like, what is triggering your buyers? When does the journey start? Who is involved? Like, what are kind of the steps that they go through? Where do they look for? Who do they ask? Who do they follow? Who are the influencers in the industry? Because who do they talk to? Like, are there any specific communities? Are there any people that I respect and follow? Are there any maybe specific associations where they gather and where they hear about vendors and solutions, or just case studies from other people? Like, who else is involved, and what kind of, like, requirements they have, what kind of purchase decisions they have, the purchase criteria, I'm sorry, that they use to evaluate a product like yours. And finally, like, what is the exact reason that it chose to work with you and not with somebody else? These are all the things that you don't know, and these are all the things that you need to find out. And the only way for you to find out is to do in-depth customer interviews. So when you talk about market research, I'm specifically interested in figuring out who our best customers are, looking at a CRM, not looking, and I would, like, even in B2B, especially complex B2B, you want to even go down to the level of a segment, and then within that segment saying, okay, for that segment, who are our best customers? And then go and interview those customers. And that's how you create the ideal. Ideal means it's based on your best customers. Customer profile, it's based on actual customer insights. And profile just means, okay, you collected all this information in a way that it's not just some sort of a fictive persona, like marketing Mary or try hard Tammy or something like that, but it's actual information both about the firmographics, demographics of the best fit accounts. Also, like, the buying committee, like, who is participating in there, because it's never one person who is actually buying. And finally, also the buying journey that I spoke about, like, all the things that are related to that are part of your research, should be part of your research, and should be part of your ideal customer profile.
Yeah, one of the things that I find very often is that when I see that the client has run some kind of market research, usually what I get in exchange is kind of a one page, explaining the buyer persona, age, gender, professional profile, and I'm like, yeah, but what I want to know is how does he behave? That's what actually matters, and this is why. As soon as you understand this, you understand that running just Google search ads doesn't work to get leads, because you're missing the whole funnel. You're missing the whole funnel as
Yeah.
soon as you start to understand that the need, something that starts, uh, yeah, like very very sooner. Yeah, that's great. And therefore, you have said that, yeah, indeed, when analyzing how our client behaves, our ICP behaves, one of the important things that we usually try to look for is, where does he behave? Where, does he go to Reddit, to LinkedIn, to any kind of social media specialized industry platform or whatever? And now it's becoming very common to talk about social selling. Especially me, with the network that I have, when I go through LinkedIn, I find most of my peers in marketing B2B talking about social selling and how important it is. I wanted to talk about this with you because sometimes I think, and this is following our last question. Sometimes I feel like, yeah, okay, social selling is great, but have you assessed before whether your audience is on LinkedIn? And once you've done social selling, is something else that you could do on top of that? So I would like to ask you, what is the role that you think that doing demand generation social selling plays? Uh,
No, I
yeah,
think it's a really good question, and just like to break it into parts, because you did it like that. First of all, of course, you need to figure out whether your audience is on LinkedIn. Now, for a lot of B2B companies, this is a case, and there are obviously industries where this is not a case, and then LinkedIn will be less applicable. But let's say your audience is on LinkedIn. The problem that a lot of teams have is that they are focused on the selling part of the social selling, which is basically a lot of times doing a lot of outreach. Again, it's just like a different name. They just old wine in new bottles, and they basically do lead generation and outreach, generic outreach, automation, and all of that in the name of social selling. Now, social selling, and let's just talk about LinkedIn, because this is to make it as concrete as possible.
sure.
LinkedIn is I think like probably 91% of our inbound pipeline, or even like the whole pipeline, comes through LinkedIn for us. A lot of our clients have also a lot of success on LinkedIn, but not from just connecting to people, reaching out and pitching your product. The part that is missed most often is thought leadership and demand generation through content that you share on LinkedIn and through commenting, another thing that is extremely important and that a lot of people miss. So that's the first part. And if you're talking about content, I think there is, I mean, I can go long about it, so I won't. But let
There's a
me put it
question for
just like
that.
this. When I'm talking about content, I don't mean like superficial, I don't know, what is informational security type of content, or me too, like copy paste type of content, or content that is not really relevant to your buyers. It's really, really the key is that that content actually answers the questions that your buyers have and is going to influence them, and they are genuinely interested in the topics that you're writing about. So this is the first part. So I mean, I believe that LinkedIn is just an amazing opportunity for companies, for B2B companies in many industries. It's still underutilized, and it's just an amazing opportunity to drive the demand, the awareness first within the target accounts. Like a lot of the companies, especially like smaller companies entering new markets. We have a lot of clients who want to move from Europe to the United States, and or are just like not the top in the category, like the majority isn't, right? And so what that means is that your target accounts, your ideal potential clients just don't know about you, don't even know what you do, why, why you should be worth considering, how you can benefit them, etc. And what I find about LinkedIn is just an amazing that you can not, it's not like marketing out there in the open. It's like very targeted. Like, speaking about content marketing and demand generation, like it's extremely targeted. And that's like one of the best. But for you to be able to do that, that means that you actually need to have also the relevant network. And that's another mistakes that I see a lot of people making. And that is only connecting to the decision makers. And there is just such a missed opportunity, because first of all, decision makers usually are not interested in what you're selling. The actual decision maker and the C-suite level, they're more interested in things like, okay, is this the right solution category for us? Is that what you? They don't care. They're not even like involved in actual vendor research or selection. They're thinking about other things. They're too busy. They're not going to give you their attention. So what we always advise is connect to the whole buying committee. Figure out, again, customer research, figure out who is actually participating in the buying, because you don't see that. You're usually just speaking to one or two people, sometimes to more. It depends on the kind of products that you're selling, but usually you don't see the whole buying committee. So figure that out first, and then start connecting to the whole buying committee and creating awareness across that company. Another very big missed opportunity on LinkedIn for people is that they only connect to, let's say you're connecting to the decision maker, you're connecting to your target accounts. The problem is also that it's really hard to get their attention, and it's really sometimes easy to get the attention of other people in the industry who in turn are connected to your buyers. So you and I are here. You're not my ideal customer profile. I'm not your ideal customer profile. But us collaborating, I'm going to get some exposure to your audience. You're going to get some exposure to my audience. So we are actually co-creating, collaborating here. And we met on LinkedIn, by the way. And so if we weren't like connecting also with people from our industry, our reach would be much, much smaller. So who you can connect to with people from the industry can be, just people who will never buy from you but are active on LinkedIn. We call them engagers. Or you can be connecting also to people who are more like kind of influencers. You can be connecting to potential partners, so other brands in your industry in other words, the way that I like to say it, you want to build relationships and actually with people that your buyers already trust, because the easiest way for you to build authority and build audience is to tap into existing authority and audience of other people. So okay, that's another mistake. The third mistake is that you're just reaching out to people cold, and it's just such a missed opportunity. I mean, there's two problems in there. Like the first one is you're reaching in a generic way, so you're not personalizing. That's a big problem. And second of all, you're reaching out cold, and there is no reason for you to reach out cold on LinkedIn. You can always use some sort of a trigger. And the best trigger for us is if you're already doing the first part, which is thought leadership and content creation, is reaching out based on the engagement on your existing content. Why? Because people buy from people that they know, like, and trust. And them already being engaged, reading your content, consuming it, liking it, and commenting on it is an indication that they know you. They're starting, maybe they bought into their philosophy already. So it's so much easier. Like usually I never reach out to people cold, or maybe I will do for a specific reason, never pitch them, of course, but will then really personalize it and maybe warm up people before I do that. I usually reach out to people who have somehow engaged with my content. And you know what? I'm having acceptance rates of 80% or more. I'm having response rates of above 50%. And these are not the usual response rates that you have in the industry. And finally, the third thing is like also just like pitching. Like, okay, when is the right time to pitch? Well, is the fact that somebody liked your content, commented, or maybe like even like joined your webinar or whatever, is this buying intent? No, that's not buying intent. That's just engagement. And so instead of like, it's like you go out in a bar and maybe you meet somebody in the bar, a woman or a man, it doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
and you want to, like, you're not going to propose marriage there. Like, your goal is maybe to, get them to have a little chat, and maybe for them to say yes to the next date, to go out with you for a cup of coffee or whatever. So that's an appropriate thing, right? And that's something that we understand in private life, but we don't understand like online. Somehow, we go too soon. So somebody engaged, well, thank them for that and ask them about their interest in the topic. You can start talking about it in a non-salesy way, and a lot of times, if they are ready, they're going to, ask you. And if they're not ready, that's fine, because this is a long game, right? So you want to be there, you want to building that relationship until when they're ready to buy, they will still be thinking of you, as because you were there all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's actually the key of demand generation. Letting the customer to come to you at the right moment, the right person, knowing everything about you. That's great. And I actually wanted to ask you about content, because that's exactly one of the key points of demand generation. That's why I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the keys for making a content generation strategy work? You have actually said that you can't talk about random content. There, it has to be relevant. It has to resonate across your audience. So, what do you think are the keys for making that happen?
Well, again, let's go back to customer research. So that's where it all starts. You want to understand, like I mentioned, the buyer journey, all the different stages, who is involved, what the purchase criteria are, and very important, at each stage, what kind of questions and objections do they have, right? That's the first part. You can
Yeah.
do more research as well, but your goal is to collect the topics that your buyers are genuinely interested in, and then for those topics, understanding also, maybe potentially some subtopics, questions, etc. And so the goal of your content is to basically, answer those questions, talk about, the kind of challenges that they have. We said that example about, this triggering event, maybe, having a bad board meeting or missing the targets. Well, missing the targets is an interesting topic that we can talk about. Or, they are figuring out like what is going on and why they are, missing the targets. Well, maybe you can write about, 5 reasons, 10 reasons why you might be, missing your targets. Again, something that is very there is a question that I have interest in that topic. So part of it is customer research, just what they told you. The other part is the during the customer research I mentioned, you should ask them about who do they follow, where do they hang out. So are there any specific communities, which events do they attend? Well, then go to those communities, check out what are the most popular questions there, most popular topics and questions that the target buyers are asking. Check the influencers and thought leaders, check what they are posting about, but also check in their comments. Like sometimes really in the comments of your target buyers that they post on their influencers and thought leaders will give you this insight. So there's a lot of well, I mentioned events, go to the events, just ask people. I mean just do this one thing. If you don't do any of these things, here's a very practical thing that you can do. Go now on LinkedIn, identify whatever 10, 20, 30 people who fit your ICP, and reach out to them and say, hey, I want to start posting more on LinkedIn about my topic, whatever your topic is. And would you mind just sharing, what are the kind of topics that you would be interested in learning more about? A little survey or just a conversation with them. They will be happy to help. You're going to get much better response rate than just, reaching out cold. And with that in mind, so that's the basis. You want to figure that out. Second, you also want to create content. I mean, a lot of people, when they create content, a lot of companies, when they create content, the way that they do it is they do some keyword research and then they create content for search engines. They don't create content for buyers. This content is usually, you know, quite superficial. It's very generic. It doesn't really influence the buyers. Nobody really cares. And very often, unfortunately, it's kind of like, copy paste from, 10 things that you found on different places. You put it together, you write an article. And another problem with that is that even if you had the best possible piece of content on your website, well, guess what? Your buyers are not on your website. And so what do a lot of companies do? Well, they take the link from the website and they post it from the company page on LinkedIn. They just post it there and they expect people to click through and read your that's not how people consume content these days. What people do is they want to if they're on a social, in a community, let's not just talk about LinkedIn, but like any kind of social platform, they want to consume the type of content that usually works well on that platform. They're used to consume like whatever, some text posts or short videos on LinkedIn. TikTok, obviously, let's say these are like short, more funny videos. YouTube, these are like 10 to 15-minute videos that dive deeper. They like to, maybe some people like to consume podcasts like this. Some people like to visit webinars, whatever it is. Like, you want to create content that is um, optimized for native consumption so that people can consume it there. Thinking about the buyer experience, you don't want them to have to click. And the worst thing you don't want them to do is you don't want them to have to click to then see a landing page that they have to read, opt in, wait for a couple of hours before your marketing automation sends them an email with that piece of content. This is probably the worst possible experience. And
Absolutely.
yeah, you want to just to be able to consume it as easy as possible. I
Yeah.
mean, I can go on a lot, go on about content creation, etc. But I don't want to. I just want to wrap up with just saying one more thing, and we spoke about it. Also, don't think just about creating content, all of your content yourself. Think about co-creation. Co-create, like I mentioned, Pablo and myself right now, we are co-creating content here, right? He's using my input to create content for his audience, and podcasts or live webinars, partner webinars are just one example. I mean, even just you can even just use other brands, what you've learned about them, and just write about it, even without actually necessarily interviewing them or having had a conversation with them. You can actually use that and write about it. So there are different ways. And finally, also, there is so much that you can repurpose as well. Like, I'm sure that out of whatever, like one webinar or one podcast interview, you can get out whatever 5-10 really good gems that you can now take and repurpose as individual posts, etc., etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you do that work well, then you generate direct social, so all your contents can go to the buyer committee, as you said. So
Absolutely. I mean, I just today I just closed the deal today. And the way that it
congratulations.
all started, thank you. And the way that it all started was a CFO was following me on LinkedIn and was consuming some of the content. But you mentioned this, like, the idea with demand gen is the buyers are going to reach out to you. Well, I'd like to add one nuance. There's nothing wrong with you being proactive as long as you're doing the right action at the right time. So, for example, in this case, I was like, the CFO was reading and following me, and he liked or commented on my post. And I just reached out and said, hey, thanks a lot. Like, if you want to know more about the topic, I can share more resources, which he said, yeah, I would like to see that. I shared, we had started a conversation. So that went on for a while. And then he said, you know what, maybe you should talk to my CEO. He's like reconsidering their demand gen strategy. So I went and I spoke to the CEO, COO, and today I spoke to the demand gen, the head of demand gen. And so what happened actually, and now I'm learning, is that I've been like sharing my posts also internally, and that happens a lot. They've been sharing my posts internally. They've been like, and I had to like have this contact with these different buying members of the buying committee before this work. So there's the dark social working there, definitely.
Yeah, and it happens more often than one could imagine up front.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
amazing.
I don't know. You don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
That's why
yeah.
it's dark social. You don't know.
You don't
I
know.
just, the only way that I know is that sometimes people tell me that, like in private messages, because I always like say thanks or like try to spark conversation. They say, yeah, I've been following you for a while. I never see them like, okay, well,
Yeah,
super. I've been following you for a while, and I've been sharing like your post in our company Slack. Well, wow, okay. That's the only way that I would know. Otherwise, I wouldn't know.
yeah. They never give a like. They never comment. They do nothing. And one day, suddenly, out of the blue, they appear and they say, "I want a meeting. I've been following you for I don't know how much time." And they know everything about you, and you didn't know they even existed. It's amazing because yeah,
And this is what you want, because we spoke a bit at the beginning about what happens if you just do cold outreach and pure lead gen and you're hoping to get there at the right time. Basically, what you're trying to do is just capture the demand. Non generate demand, just capture the demand. What happens, you're perceived as one of many, as a commodity. But this is very, very different than what you just said, like people really knowing everything about you. And this is what happens. Like, I mean, in most cases, we are not competing. They're not like coming to me and to another and to an agency and to I don't know what. Like this is like very rarely that happens. Like usually they're
yeah,
just talking to me. Why? Because based on, like you say, them knowing all about you, they believe that you're the best fit. They have already made their selection. Maybe they're not yet sure, they need to check and talk to you and all of that. That's all fine. But this is why demand generation is so effective, right? Because you sold them on your approach, you sold them on your philosophy, you sold them essentially on your value proposition, your positioning, and they said, okay, this seems like the best fit for us, and they're coming there. The sales meetings are short, sales cycles are short, and they're not complex. Everything is easier, the win rates are higher. You normally also can charge more, because again, you're not a commodity, you're not competing on the price, you're not one of the many, you're perceived as unique, and so you can also charge, like, say, premium. All of these good things happen because of that, because of the demand gen.
yeah. I love that. And one of the things that I recently added to my market research strategy is to try to understand once my client wants to talk with me, leads, who do they want to talk with? Because as soon as you work under the formula that you just have explained, the thing is that most likely they will not like to talk with an SDR. They would like to talk with an account manager.
Absolutely.
There is no
Ab-
pitch needed.
no, and how many companies make that mistake?
Absolutely.
They have their process, qualification, all of that. I mean, turn this around. I mean, it's such an annoying experience. I know what I want, and I have some questions. I need to do these final checks or whatever. And now I'm going there and I want to know fast. It's like
Yeah,
I'm busy. Like I have all the other things. Like buying, it's not my main job. It's on top of everything else that I do, right? So and it's like confusing, and you don't have all the information, and it's like, okay, you're uncertain. And then when you want to know something, when you want to have the information from the salespeople, you want to have it fast. You want to have it easy. So if I have to go there, if I have to like book a demo and then wait for somebody to contact me for a couple of days, and then I book the call somehow, and I have a call, but it's actually with the SDR who is not really showing me the product, who is not
yeah,
telling me about the price. It's extremely frustrating. Then they send you to the account executive. Then you're talking to the account executive who is asking you like half of the same questions because they didn't really, share the information. It's an extremely once I had to, I was kind of buying, like, it was basically a partnership, and I was also asking in the name of some of my clients, and they made me talk to account executives from 3 different regions. First the partnership manager, and then account executive. It was such a frustrating experience. And then finally I passed two levels, like two account executive, and then I got stuck with the third one. That was just so to make it like very concrete, like think about this as friction. Like you worked so hard to generate that demand, they're coming to you. Now try to remove friction as much as possible. All of these things are just friction. You have to make it easy for them to buy from you, right? Don't just put the calendar immediately. If they want to talk to somebody, make sure they're immediately talking to the person who can give all the information, tell them the price, and just, or just like actually put a price on a website. Why
Yeah, sell
not?
them. Yeah, sell them. If they don't want to sell, if they just they want to sell, then sorry, to buy, then just let them buy.
Yeah, let them buy, or if it's maybe that's not possible, but at least give some price ranges on the, because if that's the information they want to know and it's too much, well, you don't want to talk to them if it's too much for them. Like,
That's it.
let them. Don't also hide like the product features. Like a lot of companies, they write about the product in a way that's like copywriting way and the benefits, but you don't really see what the product does, and you can only see it again through a sales demo. Like, why don't you like tell me more about a product? If I want to learn more, tell me, let me learn, give me the product video, whatever. Like, help me understand this quickly so that I can evaluate whether it's a good fit for or not, so that once we are in sales we can talk like deal, like we can talk, okay, what do you need to get the approval, what kind of information and all of that stuff that has to happen anyhow.
Totally. Yeah. Like a few weeks ago, I was talking to a company whose lead magnet was to let leads ask for the price, because they were not giving the price away. So it was like, yeah, that's your lead magnet. People just wanted to know the price. How many leads are you going to generate?
Mm.
How many leads are you going to need just for getting one client? But one thing that you said, that you talk about, and I think is very important, you talked about outreach, you talk about cold messaging on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
A lot of people, when they hear or they talk about social media, they include cold messaging to their network on LinkedIn. And one scenario which I think is very common, especially when it comes to startups, especially when they are under the stress of trying to close an investment round, is to fall under what I call the outreach trap. They just want leads because that gives them the feeling of being doing things that ultimately will convert into short-term revenue. And sometimes I face a situation where I have to explain that demand generation might look like a mid-term or long-term game, but actually, if you compare it to lead generation or to cold outreach, can actually bring you results in a shorter period. Do you agree with that? I mean, is lead generation a short-term game, or can demand generation be and become your short-term strategy?
Yeah, I have to be honest. I do believe that demand gen is a long-term strategy, and if you don't have a long-term mindset, if you're not going into this with patience and knowing that it will take some time before the results will really show, you're going with the wrong expectations, and I can tell you right away that you're going to give up too early. The way that the demand generation works is that at the beginning you're not seeing a lot of results. For a while you might not be seeing a lot of results, you may be seeing some results, but then once it starts working, the results compound over time. It's like investing. Like at the beginning you're investing, you're not seeing, like the returns are very minimal, you're not really seeing it. It's only after a while, when the capital that you're earning starts to compound and produce its own interest, after some years you're starting seeing this return. I think that Warren Buffett, I think, like, I mean, 90% of his wealth or so he made after he was 60, but he wouldn't have made
Yeah.
hadn't he kept investing his, let's say, all adult life. Anyhow, so this is important for people to understand. It is a long-term game. Now, lead generation is more linear, like, and people expect everything to be linear. That's how we think in a very linear way, and so you expect both to be linear. So you try demand gen, you're not getting the kind of results, so you give up, and you give up too early. And then if you try the lead gen and it seems to work at the beginning, because you're booking maybe some calls, people are responding, maybe you're booking some calls, and it takes a while before you realize that it's not really working well, that you have all the things that we spoke about at the beginning, all the symptoms that you have at the beginning, low close rate, you're not talking to the right people, they're not really buying, all of these things that are happening when you're doing pure lead gen. It takes you a while. Usually it takes companies like, I don't know, sometimes up to a year, 2 years to figure. Well, 2 years is long, but let's say 6 months to a year to figure out, because they've hired people, they're doing all these things, they start to see what seems like results, like booked meetings, etc. And only later they figure out, well, actually, okay, we didn't close a lot of them. I studied a campaign that was like, okay, lead gen, but then with ads on LinkedIn, and they spent like 30,000 euros over 6 months. They generated 1,300 leads. A lot of those leads were a good fit. So because on LinkedIn you can target really well with LinkedIn ads, and they never did one check, which I did for them at the beginning. And how many actual deals did you generate? And they didn't generate any. Literally they generated 2 opportunities. Maybe was that due to the ads? I don't know. It seems so, according to their CRM, HubSpot. But at the end, these were not really real opportunities and no deals. So this usually people figured out that much, much later with lead gen. It just seems that it works faster. Yeah, and with the demand gen, what can you do to kind of have short-term results? Well, what I will always advise, and this is like kind of like ABM as well, because the first thing to do is to figure out, do we already have some intent data? So if we have, for example, an existing website, and we are having people visiting the target accounts, we are not just starting, right? So we have business running for a couple of years. Well, let's look which accounts are visiting our website. Okay, so maybe they're showing some engagement, and so let's just first focus on them. Like, let's focus on people who are actually potentially in the market, or at least who know us and who have been educated by us. So that's the first step. The second step is that I would focus on some sort of a play where I end up with buyer conversations. These are not sales conversations. These are like, for example, co-creation, maybe inviting a buyer to a podcast, like you have a podcast, or maybe writing something together. It doesn't really matter what you want, because that's probably the fastest way, because you're now generating content, you're co-creating content, you're starting with your demand gen, but you're doing that in a very targeted way to your target. You're making sure that whatever you're doing is actually being seen by your ideal customer profile, and you're having those conversations, which sometimes and often, especially if you have selected your accounts well and there was a previous engagement, does lead to more short-term results.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. How can a startup in that position can speed that process up? Because yeah, usually the rush of starting up usually brings the CEO and the CMO to a position where they need short-term results. And yeah, one of the things that I've seen on your LinkedIn profile and on your website that you talk about is using ABM strategies combined with demand generation.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that idea. You talk
Mm-hmm.
about bringing people to your podcast, reaching out directly to your audience. I believe that's very interesting, to share, to merge both strategies,
Mm-hmm.
ABM and demand generation. That sounds like very regional, actually, because no one talks about it.
No, I know. I think a lot of people have this idea about ABM, like people who actually understand it, let's say, they have this idea. It's basically kind of outbound, but then on a very targeted list. Or maybe you're doing some kind of like display ads or something, like maybe to warm up, to kind of like do some warm up before you're reaching out.
Yeah.
But that's not account-based marketing, that's account-based outreach. Account-based marketing has marketing, and marketing means everything we spoke about today, right? So it includes deep understanding of the ICP. That's marketing. That's like one-on-one marketing. It includes also, driving some demand, educating the buyers. Now with ABM, you can do this in a much more targeted way, and you can, like, especially if you have some sort of intent data about, them being in the market, especially if you have first party intent data, your own data, like some previous engagement, you can actually, get results quicker. But even with ABM, it's not a short-term game. None of this is short-term. And if you want a short-term, if you're really a startup just starting, I would just advise you to do what every other startup does, and that just look at your network, right? Connect with people that you already know, or that can help you get connected to the right people. Do whatever you can to land those first deals, but meanwhile, if you're not working on pipeline for the, in the 6 months, in the year, you're not going to have it. You're going to dry up your network. You're going to squeeze the last possible juice out of it. And then you're going to be like, oh shit, what should we do? Then what will happen? I can predict it. You're going to do some lead gen. You're just going to start some massive outbound outreach, and you're going to close some deals, usually very small deals. You're going to think that, oh, this seems to be working, and let's scale this. So you're going to start to scale this to maybe other region, maybe hiring more people, maybe doing like bigger lists, etc. What will happen is after 6 months or so, 6 months or a year, you will realize that this is not really working. You have scaled the sales team. You will have to fire a lot of people from your BDR team. And you are going to be like, okay, only then starting to build a pipeline in the right way, which will take 6 months to a year before it's really starting to work. So just think about that.
Yeah, totally. And that applies to entrepreneurs. But last two questions. What about if you were interviewing a company today, a CMO, whose company is already working, they're doing lead generation, and they feel okay with their results. Sometimes that happens, that you can be talking with a company doing lead generation using Google search and all of this stuff, and they're happy with it. So what would you say to that CMO who says, hey, I'm running lead generation strategies, they work, I'm happy with it? What do you think would be like the changing point where he would see that demand generation is actually a better tool? What could be the advantages of demand generation?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Whatever you say, it's not going to make a big difference. If they're set in their ways, if they believe this is the right way, if it's actually even maybe working for them, they're going to keep doing that. So there's
Yeah,
not a lot of things that you can do. The only thing that you might be able to do if you get an opportunity, maybe you're working for such a CMO, right, as an internal marketer, etc. The only thing that you can do is what I did. I just mentioned this example where I analyzed this campaign, this lead gen campaign with 1,300 leads that never really brought sales. So this is something you should start doing. You should actually analyze and really figure out whether these leads are actually converting into sales. What kind of deals you are generating? Are those the top deals that you're generating? I would doubt it. Maybe, I mean, again,
yeah,
I don't know, right? If it's working, it's working. But do this analysis. That's the only thing that you can do. But usually, I don't bother. Like, I mean, if people are not in the right mindset, very often we know this from experience. They have to learn the hard way.
yeah. And actually, we don't get to have that kind of conversations because usually the leads that we talk to have gone through all of our process, so they know, they know,
Yeah,
they are aware
exactly.
of the yeah,
They're not going to be reaching out to you if they don't know that they have the problem, if they don't have that mindset. So yeah,
yeah.
that never happens.
That
And
never
if it
happens.
I mean, if it would happen, I would, to be honest, because we have our inquiry and we ask a lot of questions, we don't make it so easy to book a call with us.
Yeah,
So we have a lot of questions, and we screen each and every lead that comes in, and we disqualify a lot of them. I just say, hey, this, we might not be the best fit for you for what you're looking for. We are either booked fully, whatever it is, but we will disqualify that lead. And if, for example, I mean, it doesn't really happen, but if it would be, and maybe it happened once or twice that they say basically, oh, okay, lead generation, whatever. Okay, there's just not the right mindset. I don't even want to spend time talking to them until they're ready to talk about serious stuff.
Doesn't it happen to you that when you say no, they want it more after that?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes, not actually, not usually. I wouldn't say this is usual response.
No,
I
it's okay.
mean, because you know what? Because if you say if you as a vendor say, I don't think we're the right fit, like, okay, they are not going to be thinking, yeah, you are the right fit. I mean, if even you say you're not the right fit, they will say, okay, maybe I should look for something that is better fit.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it does happen. It is funny.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so last question, a very broad question. How do you see B2B marketing in 5 years' time, for instance? Where do you think is going to evolve?
Yeah, that's that's a broad question indeed, and of course nobody has a crystal ball, especially
Sure.
in our business. There is so much that is going on that whatever you say, you're not going to nail it. But I do see a couple of things that are happening right now, or that I think should at least happen more. And one thing that I see happening is that I think that until very recently, you I think there is an expression like the tide that rise all the boats. Like there is a when the things are going well, when the marketing's growing,
Yeah.
you basically have a lot of companies who are living from that growth, even though they might not have a clear differentiation, even if they don't have a good strategy. And I think a lot of those companies will disappear in 5 years. Like if you don't have clear differentiation, if you don't know who your best customers are, you're not going to survive, because competition is just getting tougher, and it's getting tougher in an exponential way, right? So it's like in 2011 we had 150 startups in the martech world in just that one category, and now there are like what is it, like 8,000-9,000. So this is exponential growth, and it's not stopping anytime soon. Maybe there is now a slowdown because also investments is harder to get, but it's not going to slow down that much. The second thing that I see is that a lot of companies, especially with higher deal size, larger deal size, nowadays are sales driven. So they have marketing, but marketing is really kind of a operational role, doing some awareness activities, sending out
Communication and
newsletter.
yeah.
Yes, communication.
Yeah.
Maybe creating presentation, doing a booth on a trade show and things like that. And I believe that marketing, that the winning companies definitely are going to be the ones who figure out marketing, because it's really where the scale is, and it's really hard to scale sales driven organization, much not impossible, but much harder to scale than having a good marketing engine. I think marketing will become more and more important, and will be a key for a lot of winning companies to really reach that scale that they're looking for. I think that also we spoke about today a lot about social selling or LinkedIn and all of that stuff. And I think what you see, actually, it's not brands who are active on LinkedIn, it's people. It's key people from the company. I think this is like, if you look at like small companies, like consulting companies, agencies, individual like consultants, etc., you have a lot of that. But if you look at larger companies, nobody's doing that. So this is like, still really a way to go. And again, I think the winning companies will realize that, and more key people are going to become, let's say, the ambassadors, or their personal brands are going to be a major driver as well on social, that is done right. Like today we explain it, not like generic outreach and all of these things. And all of these things are just going to be less and less and less effective, like, and die out, like as they should, really. And then I think that another thing that will happen is that there will be, I believe, also more personalization, because one of the easiest way for you to stand out is to be more relevant, right, for somebody, to be like a really good fit for somebody. And you can achieve that by personalizing your marketing. And so, I mean, some of our we had campaigns that we ran, ABN campaigns that we ran, where we personalized everything one-on-one with 100% response rate. Doesn't mean that everybody buys, because not everybody is ready, but you're basically there. If there is an opportunity to be generated, you can generate it because of this personalization, because you're speaking not in about genetic challenges and priorities, but about exactly the challenges and priorities of your target accounts. And I think, more and more again, especially when it comes to a large deal size, more and more companies are going to figure it out and going to be doing more of that. And technology will also be helping. There will be more data. There will be easier ways for us to do this in future. So I believe this will be a part of the mix.
Super interesting. Super interesting. I didn't expect that answer. I think it's very insightful. The whole interview has been very insightful. I have learned a lot. Thank you very much, Vladimir. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
No, I think definitely if you like this episode, please give Pablo and his podcast a thumbs up on whatever your favorite platform is. Follow us on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, just look me up on LinkedIn. I'm sure that Pablo will also share my LinkedIn profile and our website in the podcast description, so you can find it easily. Just connect to me. Mention that this is where you saw me. Ask me any question. Follow me, and we can help you learn more.
Absolutely, as you have said, I will put your LinkedIn link on the below the episode, as well as your website. Thank you very much for being here. It has been a complete pleasure. Please follow us, and thank you very much again, Vladimir. It has been a real pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. Si quieres estar al día sobre todos mis posts y actualizaciones donde hablo de generación de demanda B2B, por favor, dale a esta campanita que encontrarás en mi perfil y así LinkedIn te lo enseñará todo. Muchas gracias.